Screen clear?
Yeah, very clear. Please.
So, good evening to one and all. Welcome to this webinar on healthcare technologies industry to hospital, the needs and the met needs and the unmet needs. So, I'm going to be talking about the point of care testing, where it fills the gap between the test and treat. There's a big gap between testing and treating, and how the point of care products, devices can fill in this gap. So as we all know that diagnostics or the lab cost is only 2% of the healthcare spending, but it influences 90%, 70% of the medical decisions. So for example, if a patient comes in with a fever without a lab test of determining if it is malaria, dengue, or chikungunya, or even COVID-19, it's not possible for the doctor to give treatment. So a very accurate lab result is very important for the doctor to give the treatment. However good your treatment might be, but without the right accurate lab result, it's not possible to give the right treatment. Now looking at some success stories that India has done extremely well at, and where we have been able to fill the gaps. So we look at the Indian pharmaceutical industry, it's a shining star all over the world. So Indian pharmaceutical industry is third largest in terms of volume and 13th largest in terms of value. India has the second highest number of US FDA approved facilities outside the US. And the labor costs in India are much lower than other manufacturing hubs by up to 40%. The country has a large pool of talented scientists and workmen, as we all know. So this has made India a pharmacy to the world. Another area where India has been extremely successful has been India is the information technology capital of the world, the IT capital of the world. So combining these strengths can be extremely good for the diagnostic industry, because diagnostics is a combination of chemistry and information technology. If you look at certain success stories that we have had in the recent past about making in India, and if you look at the swab story, the swab that is used in the viral transport medium for COVID-19 testing, all the swabs that were being used in the viral testing medium were being imported from China, and there was a shortage, and it was at a high price. And that's when the government stepped in, and the government came in and they contacted Reliance, they contacted J&J, and they got together, and within 10 days India was manufacturing swabs on its own, and this brought the cost down to 1/10. So it helped fill the gap between the high costing and the supply chain. And today we have enough manufacturers of viral transport medium in India. Another success story was the COVID rapid test and ELISA test manufacturers. We have enough capacity in India to supply our rapid test, ELISA test, and we also have RT-PCR manufacturers in India currently. So to address the gap of high prices is Make in India. Make in India can really help reduce the cost. And if you look at hospitals that have been extremely successful, there was a Harvard case study done on Arvind Eye Hospital, and it's one of the lowest cost models in the world with quality treatment. And they started making their own IOL, intraocular lenses, which were being imported. And again, similar story like the swabs, almost 1/10 of the cost. And that helped them to become the lowest cost operations for cataract surgeries, and at the same time providing good quality. Another great example is Narayan Hridayalaya. They also have done extremely well in providing cost-effective treatment and closing the gaps. Now coming to POCT devices. So as the biggest gap is between test and treating. And most people think that POC is only about glucometer testing, but that's not true. The POC market is evolving extremely fast. And if you look at all these devices, they can do complex testing even now. So from a basic test for biochemistry up to RT-PCR also can be done on POC devices. As you can see here, there's a plethora of devices available in the industry, which can be used by hospitals, can be used by clinics, can be used by even patients at home environments. So how can point of care diagnostics help fill the gap between test and treat and help the patients and the hospitals? So if you look at India, it's a dichotomy. 70% of India's population lives in the rural areas, but 75% of the medical infrastructure is in the urban areas. Nearly 86% of all medical visits in India are made in rural areas, with majority of people traveling 100 kilometers just to avail a healthcare facility, which 70 to 80% is bound out of in-pocket spending. We have done a study of the benefits of POCT testing to the rural citizens in our country. So if you look at the left-hand side, this is the current scenario where the average rural citizen has to travel to the nearest PHC or a secondary or tertiary hospital, and he spends one day just in traveling. And if the patient is really sick, he cannot travel on his own, and he needs an escort to travel with him. So day one, he reaches the hospital. Day two, he comes back and gets his test results, or he has to stay in the same town. We all have been outside Delhi AIMS. For those of you who have not been outside AIMS, you can see the people coming. You can see those people coming from rural India and just waiting on the road outside Delhi AIMS just to get a treatment because it's too expensive for them to go back and come back again. So it takes almost 3 days to get a simple medical treatment. But when you move to the POCT model, within one day you can test and treat. So on the same day you go, you get your report and you can get the treatment done. So the cost benefit for the patient is 1,350 rupees versus 1,950 rupees if the patient is traveling on his own. So he has saved 600 rupees. And if he is traveling with somebody else who's taking care of him or her, he has saved 1,300 rupees. So you can see in our country, this amount might seem small to us, but for a patient who's living in the rural areas, it's a daily wage earner, it's quite a big amount. Another challenge or gap that we're facing that India has very low healthcare providers. As this is as per a WHO study done, the government statistics say there are 38% of vacancies for laboratory technicians, and this is only going to increase. So the point of care devices can help fill this gap because for point of care devices, you just need a trained person who doesn't need to be a laboratory technician. There's simple devices to be that can be used, and you just need a training one time, either from the manufacturer, supplier, or from the hospital itself. Another big challenge that I've seen personally is maintaining a cold chain. We all know that we are facing, there's not a shortage of food in India, but there's a shortage of food because the cold chain is not available and a lot of food rots on its way. Similar thing has been happening in the medical supplies. A lot of vaccines are not maintained in the cold chain, and that's why they lose their potency. And similarly, in reagents, which are based on enzymes, they need cold chain from 2 to 8 degrees. And we have seen in the rural areas, there's a severe problem of having electricity. So a lot of times the electricity goes for hours and maybe even a day. And that's when our reagents, our diagnostics can get exposed to temperature and they can lose their efficiency. This is another big challenge. But point of care testing, most of the point of care testing reagents are stored at room temperature. So again, for a country like ours, it's a big boon because they don't need a cold chain, and the cold chain works out expensive and it's not reliable also. Another area that can be filled in is with AI, artificial intelligence, and point of care testing. Because we have such a large population, the way to provide medical care to this population is through technology. Technology is going to be the solution that's going to fill the gap between the patients and the hospitals. So if you look at AI will work extremely well with point of care devices in India because of the large population gap. And AI is based on data. The more data you have, the stronger monitoring you will get, and you will get a stronger trend. And in India, we are blessed with a population. You can a lot of data which can make AI really successful in our country. And we have always seen this outside a lot of public institutions. So there's a huge crowd trying to get treatment. And especially today, because of COVID, patients are fearing visiting hospitals because people are getting infected. So we have seen that a lot of the hospital revenues have come down due to this. But point of care testing can move testing to a much safer location, which doesn't need to be as crowded and can be closer to the homes of the patients. And this can help us fill the gap between patients fearing to go to the hospitals. Another success story, a simple point of care device, a pulse oximeter. It's not very expensive. It's a solution at your fingertip. And this can again help the hospitals because the patient can be monitored at home and before he becomes seriously ill, like what Dr. Sanjeev Gupta also mentioned in his talk, he can visit the hospital before he becomes seriously ill. So this again can save time, and in the end, in critical illness, time is life. And even as per a study done, an intervention at an early stage of detection of oxygen saturation levels could prevent deaths due to COVID-19. Looking at some future trends coming up in the market, there are various papers written that in the future of 10 years, maybe labs will not exist anymore. There'll be a chip inside your body that will just tell you the results of how you're doing, and the hospital will get an alert, and you can go to the hospital once there's something wrong with you. This has already been in the market, the continuous blood glucose monitoring. Again, it can be connected to the hospitals, the health clinics, to send alerts to the doctors before the patient gets really sick. Something else coming up in the future is going to be biosensor tattoos and a laser scanner detector for malaria infection in seconds. This is something that is happening currently, and we have all seen the Apple Watch. It has been a great success story in the US, and there have been a lot of studies where people who didn't have any symptoms, but the Apple Watch detected it and it saved their lives. And Steve Jobs has said, I think the biggest innovation on the 21st century will be the intersection of biology and technology, a new era in beginning. Thank you for your time. And we are very blessed to be in this great industry of healthcare and diagnostics, which plays an important role. 70% of the medical decisions on admission, discharge, treatment are based on diagnostics. And especially in this pandemic, we are playing an extremely important role by providing accurate diagnostics to the industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I hand over to Dr. Sanjeev Gupta.
Thank you, Abhinav. Thank you for